All right. Welcome to day 2. Today we're going to really dive into coding for the first time. But before we do, before we start setting up Visual Studio Code and learning about our integrated development environments, I wanted to just quickly go through some of the stuff we did yesterday by walking through our homework together, as you know, as you guys completed it today, just to like reinforce some of these behaviors and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions if you have any. All right. So here's the homework. So let me pull this up. So go to GitHub, right? We did this. You guys are in here. We made a Git repo. I made, using the CLI on your machine, clone the repo. Okay, so we're going to initialize a new repository. So I'm going to go in here and delete this one so we can do it together. And please, please, please feel free to stop me if there was a problem that you had during this homework assignment or if something I'm saying doesn't make sense. But we're just going to quickly walk through it together as if it was you, right? And this is your opportunity to ask questions. Okay. All right. So I'm going to create a repository following the directions. Okay, like that. Dismiss. Create a repository. What do the instructions say? Oh, great. There we go. Can everyone read? I need to make this a little bit bigger. All right. Create a new repository. We're going to name it week 1. We are not going to put a description in it. We're going to initialize it with a README. Okay. And we're going to say create repository. Everybody's gotten through this pretty successfully today, right? You all got to this step. Then, using the CLI on our machine, which we have here, clear, we are going to clone the repo on the local machine. So clone is one of the things that we were hoping to touch on last night, but we really didn't get a chance to do so. Cloning is something that is built into Bitbucket. It's built into GitHub. You're going to do all the time. There used to be in GitHub, this green button right here was a button that just said clone repository. They've since made it a little more cryptic in that you have to click this down arrow to get to this clone menu. Okay, and so what we need to do is copy this string. We're going to come in here and in here we're going to use the command git clone, which we did not talk about yesterday, and we're going to put in that string, right, that we got from GitHub. And as soon as I hit enter, what it's doing is it's going to create that repository week 1 directly in our system. So yesterday we spent a lot of time focusing on building a repository inside of our system, doing git init, but when you clone a repository from a remote source, the repository is already created and already exists. So you don't have to do git init anymore, right? If you've pulled a repository down this way. We can see that we are in the main branch, right? We can run git status in here and see that we're on origin main. And if we take a look at the files that are in here, nano readme, right? This file says exactly what is in this box. That was the readme file that was initiated by GitHub for us. So yesterday when we created a repository, we did not have those boxes checked, right? We didn't ask for a git ignore. We didn't ask for a readme. And so the repository that it created was blank. Gregory today had a little bit of a struggle because he had initiated the repository without having any of those things checked. So he missed this step right here, where we selected that we do want a README to be generated. And so his Git was giving him a warning that said the repository was cloned, but we did not, but it was a blank repository, which is perfectly fine. You could just as easily have created a blank repository and then made a file called readme.md, which we're going to learn about later today, and committed that up and pushed it to the server. Okay, so we've now followed the directions up until step 3. So we've created that repository, right? And it does have that file in there. So we navigated to our newly cloned repo. We did that by cding into the folder. So we're done with that. We open our README. which we just did and closed, and it asks us to add our name. So I'm just going to come in here and type Eric Harrison, right? Save and exit. Okay, then I'm going to add it, git add, step 6. We can check our status to see where we're at, get status. It tells us that there's a modified file. And we can say git commit -m updated readme to list my name. Right? Easy as that. Now, I can do a git push. We'll see what that does. It sends the information directly to GitHub. You know, the other way we learn to do this is git push origin master. That's doing the exact same thing, but it's being explicit about where we're pushing to and what we are, what branch we're pushing to. So, or origin main, excuse me. Okay, that would have been the exact same thing. But git push, the shorthand, because it knows that origin exists on GitHub and it knows that we're in the main repository, it's smart enough to just say, okay, I'll send it. Right? So git push is shorthand for git push origin main, and it's also, you know, doing basically the same sort of stuff that when we did it yesterday and we did -u. Okay. And then the final step was send me a link to your repository in Slack, which most of you did. Okay. And when we were talking about sending a link, what we were asking for is this part right here, the actual address. And we talked about this yesterday a little bit. We touched on it briefly. We said, this is the address to your repository. This is the one that if you're working with a team, they're going to say, send me the link. They mean this link. If a person has this link, they can come in here and get the address either on SSH or HTTPS, which we started with yesterday, or they could use, if they have the GitHub software, because GitHub makes their own Git client, they could use this interface as well. You also from here have the ability to download this as source code file, which as you start developing software, oftentimes companies that are using GitHub to distribute the product will sometimes say, you know, you can just click this and download a zip file, right, which will give us exactly that folder, right, with our README in it. So, any questions with the homework from yesterday or any of the stuff we talked about regarding Git? Yes, Andrew.
When I pushed it to GitHub, it automatically, or when I committed, it committed a file called ds-store.
Yep.
Is that just like a background, like configuration file?
That is something magic behind the scenes that your Mac is doing, and your ds-store, it tells Finder specifically, like, hey, this is the type of files in here. You know, I don't know what all it stores in there, but you know, things like image thumbnails and a bunch of silly stuff to make your Mac easier to use. That would be a perfect example to put in a gitignore file, right? So we were talking about gitignores. Let's just do that really quickly as an example, and you can follow along. Estrella, I would encourage you to follow along. You know, for those of you who are using a Mac, or as we get further into JavaScript development, we're going to have a gitignore file that's full of all kinds of stuff. So the way to do this is to just go into Nano and type nano.gitignore, right? And the format for this file is real simple. Everything you want to exclude, you put in here as a separate line. Okay, so if I wanted to exclude a ds-store, I think let's say it like this, I would just put ds-store. Okay, this is also really powerful because it has the ability to have wildcards. So we could ignore things that are star.exe if we want to not include programs that we've compiled on Windows. We could ignore, you know, we'll eventually ignore things like .env files, right, or .cfg config. You can exclude anything you want using these wildcards, right? So just to prove this, let's exclude text files, right? We don't want to have Git track our text files with us. And as soon as this file exists, right, now if we do ls-a to show all those files, you're going to see we've got a .git folder and we've got a .gitignore. If we do regular just ls, those files that have a dot in the first part of the name are hidden by default. Okay, if you want to see all those files and all these little dot files, ls-a. Okay, we said we were going to exclude .exes and also .text files. So let's make a text file. We'll do that by doing echo. We're going to say, hello, I should be ignored. And we'll say, hello, ignore me, .text. Right? So we now have a file in here that says ignore me.txt. Normally, Git would say, hey, there's an untracked file, right? If we do git status, normally it would say, hey, this new file hasn't been added. And you can see that it's got .gitignore in there. It now knows, hey, I have this list of files that this repository is going to ignore. Generally, you're going to want to check in your gitignore files so that everyone who's working on your project is all going to ignore the same stuff. A great example is if you guys were collaborating on a project later in this semester, those of you that are on a Mac, if we don't have a .gitignore in our repository to exclude dsstore files, you guys would upload a dsstore all the time, and it would clutter up our repository. Nobody on the program needs that except for you Mac people. So we're going to git add .gitignore. We're going to git commit -m include .gitignore, right? And then git push origin right? So now our gitignore is in our repository. It's there forever. But what you do notice is that we have a file in here, ignore me.txt, that this system hasn't looked at all, right? And if this was ignore me.tx, right, it would catch it. So we can do test ignore me.tx, right? It's not going to match that gitignore thing where we said .txt. So this file is going to say this is untracked, right? We obviously don't want this, but that is an example of how .gitignore works. You're going to use this and you're going to see it from time to time, especially as you continue your career. And then in the case of the people using Apple products, you're almost always going to want to include a gitignore that tells it to ignore .dsstore. Okay? Great. Any other questions? That was an excellent one. No? All right. So we're going to continue using Git, and we're going to continue using GitHub for the entire rest of this program, and you'll probably continue using this forever. Okay. But now it's time to start learning how to actually be a programmer, right? So where do we write code? Up until now, we've been kind of using Nano and playing around in the console. You will always probably end up doing something like that pretty often. But we want to use programs that are better for writing code, that provide features to us that are useful. And so there are a ton of different products out there. We've talked about a few of them, things like Visual Studio, things like Eclipse, which is for Java, NetBeans, which is really a Java product as well. Yeah, I mean, there used to be thousands and thousands of these. Back when I first got involved in computers, everybody made an IDE with compilers, right? And so these were tools that made it easy for us to write software and do things with the software. Now, there's a few different kinds of code editors that we can talk about, really just as an introduction. There's, on the light side, anything that can edit text can be a source code editor, right? You could use Notepad or Nano or whatever the Notes app is on Mac and technically write code, right? When I first started programming way back in the day, I would use Notepad and view source on web pages and write my HTML that way. But that's obviously not ideal. They don't provide any of the things that make software engineering helpful. Things like coloring your syntax, telling what line you're on. So on the light end of the spectrum, it's anything that you can write words with. In the middle of the spectrum is stuff that was built for writing code that is designed to make writing code easier, right? So Visual Studio Code is a great example of this. Atom, which is ATOM, that's another program that is really good at this. There's Notepad++, which has syntax highlighting and a bunch of stuff. There are a bunch of tools that make it really pleasant to work with code. That's kind of right in the middle, the sweet spot in the middle. And then on the far end are full integrated development environments. And what those are going to do is it's going to have the ability to let you write code, but if you're working in a programming language like C++ or Java or something like that, it's going to have a compiler built in so that you can take your code, compile it into an executable, and run it. It's going to often have debugging built in really well, so that you can step through your code and see what the value of a variable is as you do it. We're going to do a lot of that because this is a web development focused course. We have a lot of tools at our disposal because we're mostly doing browser-based development. When we get into that part and we're learning HTML and JavaScript, We're going to work on tools that let you do some of that same power feature that you would get in a full integrated development environment inside your browser. So we'll be able to look at the value of variables, we'll be able to test things, change things on the fly. So for the purposes of this course, we are going to use Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is like the lightweight version of Visual Studio that Microsoft built and released a few years ago. It's completely free, and one of the cool things about Visual Studio Code is that, along with a few other types of products like this, it's very extensible, which means that there are a lot of people on the planet that use that as their main programming editor, and they have released functions, and in Visual Studio Code they call them plugins, that make the text editor do new things. So if we're going to install a couple of plugins together today, stuff that provides special features for syntax highlighting, or let you do special things with JavaScript that don't come by default in the browser. But if you go to a job in the future and you're using Python or Ruby on Rails, you can install a plugin in Visual Studio Code that will make that easier for you. Okay? Another interesting thing about Visual Studio Code is it's got a project pane on the left-hand side. And so we've been working in repositories up until now. And in Visual Studio Code, you're going to be able to open an entire repository as like a quick handy access list over on the side, so that you can quickly jump from file to file inside the scope of your project or repository. Okay? So let's all go now and install Visual Studio Code. So it's time to follow along. I don't know what the address to it is. Okay, so it's code.visualstudio.com. Go ahead, Leah.
I already have Visual Studio Code on my computer. Should I uninstall it and reinstall it just to make it easier, or?
Nope. If you've already got it, we'll probably add some stuff to it through some plugins over the next couple of hours. But in general, yeah, if you've already got a thing and you're confident that you can just follow along, I think you'll be fine. So we're all going to go and install this program. So is everybody here? The Mac people, you're going to see the exact same thing, but it's going to say download for Mac. So when everybody's good to go, give me a thumbs up. We're just going to click this button and let it.
Give me a second.
Yep.
Give me a second.
Yeah, okay. And I will paste this in chat for everybody to click directly on if you want to do things that way. Okay, we all there? Have we all downloaded the program?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. So the very next step is opening the installer. It's going to probably, it's going to prompt you with a thing. It's going to tell you these are the terms that you're agreeing to use this software on, general liabilities and stuff, saying that if you write code, Microsoft is not responsible for anything you break, right? So we're just going to accept. It's going to ask you where to install it. You can just kind of pick the. I'm actually going to put it in my program files folder. I don't know why it would be over there. So if it's asking you to install it in a weird place, you can choose where to put it. So I'm putting it in program files. It's going to ask you to create program shortcuts in the start menu. Yes, we want that. It's going to ask slightly different things for you Mac folks. It will probably have you drag it into your applications folder, how you install Apple software to begin with. Yeah, we'll want to create a desktop icon. We'll want to have an open with code action. And we'll want to register code as an editor for supported file types. So this is going to make it really easy. If you're browsing around on your folders and you see a JavaScript file, we can say that Visual Studio Code is our default code editor. Okay. Is everyone caught up to the final installation step? All right, good. Setup was unable to create. Okay. So this is because I'm doing this on a. Okay. So I have to run this as administrator. Because Windows thinks it knows better than me. I have to be run as all right. we're just gonna go quick here and not worry about all that.
Weird.
All right, and then when you get to the final step, it might ask you if you want to launch it. Let's just say yes. Mm-hmm. Everybody following along so far? When you first run it for the first time, they're probably going to ask you something like this: help us improve VS Code by allowing Microsoft to collect data. I almost always say no, or just ignore it. It's going to ask you if you want to pick a theme, whether it's light or dark. That's entirely up to you. There's no difference in how it behaves. It's just going to be what it looks like. And we're going to probably end up playing around. There's a whole bunch of different color themes that are a lot of fun, and so maybe you can find one that fits your personality or how you like to work. As a software developer, you are going to be spending, sometimes 8+ hours a day inside this program or inside a program like this, and so customizing it to make it feel comfortable to you is really, really important. So let's just pick a theme, and I will say dark. Great. Code in any language, right? So this is kind of introducing you to the power of Visual Studio Code. It's going to let you browse language extensions. These are all the different programming languages that Visual Studio Code has a module for. So we can write code in all of these languages. For now, we definitely want to install HTML and CSS, which is about halfway down. And you can just click the install button. We are going to want to install JavaScript.
Is it HTML support?
Yep, HTML, CSS support. Right here.
Okay.
That's an important one. What else do we need? But you can see there's a ton of power in here. Node.js modules, right? We're going to want that. You're going to have to scroll quite a ways down. And we're going to install that as well. Okay. When we've done installing those two things, that's going to be a good stopping point for installing language support. But just know, and I'll share a quick guide of various commands that you can use later on that will help you get back to this. There's a bunch of different ways to get in here. There's a bunch of keyboard shortcuts. So if you're working on a project and you need Python support real quick, I think it's under the it's in one of these places. But we'll get that to you later. All right. So we browse language extensions, switch from other editors. We don't need to do this. But for old people like me that like to use Vim, I have the option to make Visual Studio Code behave like Vim. I'm not going to do that now, obviously. And then open a project folder. So this is kind of the last step of getting familiarized with Visual Studio Code. So we're just going to click that button, pick a folder, and we're going to go to our CBC 12 folder that we just created, which for me is this PC, C, users, me, CBC 12, and we're going to do week 1 because that's the one we did yesterday today for our homework. And when we're in there, it's not going to show any files, and that's because Visual Studio Code is looking for folders. So as soon as we're here, we're going to click Select Folder. Okay. And what it's done is it's cleared out all that introduction stuff, and we can see the 3 files that we made, right? We can see that there's a README file that we put our name in. We can see the get_ignore that we played with, and we can see, in my case, the ignore me.txt that we're ignoring through get_ignore. Okay? Over here, this is your project pane. The cool thing about your project pane is that you can open up multiple projects. So I can open workspace, and I can go and include week 1 homework and pull up our Git repo from yesterday. Open folder. So it replaced it, which is not ideal. How do you turn it so that you can open multiple? We'll have to figure that out together. Anyway, so we're all at this spot, right? We've all got week 1 loaded in our project with paint, right? Yes? Excellent. It's important to note that over here on the left-hand menu, you can interact with your product, with your source code in a number of different ways. So for example, I can right-click on ignore me.txt and I can delete this. This is going to, in this case, remember when we were learning on the console, that if I was in here and I type rm ignore me.txt, this is going to delete it permanently. It's not going to go to my recycle bin. Here, when I do it through this is going to move it to my recycle bin, unless, yep. So I can just click yes, and it's going to exist in my recycle bin now. So it gives you an extra layer of security, and it's a little bit more friendly for working on a day-to-day basis. All right. By default, when you click on a file over in this window, it's going to show it to you in a tab. You'll notice that this is italicized and this is not. What italicized means, when the letters are kind of at a slant, is that the file is not actually open. It's just giving you a quick preview. So if you want to edit it, you want to make changes to it, right? Let's close that real quick. As soon as you start typing in here, it opens it. Or you have the option to double click on the tab to open it. Or you have the option to double click on it here, right, in the project pane. So you can double click on it in a couple different places, but by default, if you're just clicking on it and you're clicking around, like I can show you an example, the preview is going to only take up one tab. So if I'm clicking between these two just to read some source code, it is going to show me that, but it's not actually open for editing. It will be open for editing, and you can watch up here, this README will change. As soon as I start typing, now it's got a different color, and it's a little bit bolder. The other thing that's important to note is you'll see that this little white dot showed up. This white dot signifies that there are changes that you have not yet saved, right? So if I was going to say I wanted to add my middle name, Eric Brian Harrison, right? The little dot is telling me there's unsaved changes. If I do Control S or go up here and do save, either way, in the Mac case, I think it's Command S, it is now saved. Now what makes this really cool is that Visual Studio Code knows that Git exists. And so now it's telling us this file has been modified. Okay, that's what this M means. It means I've changed it. It would be the exact same as if we were in here saying git status. Right? It knows that readme.md has been changed. So that's a really quick way when you've got a big project open and you've got hundreds of files in here, you'll know that this that we've made some changes that haven't been checked into version control. You also see that there's a little 1 over here. This is the source control mechanism. So directly from this window, you can check things in and out of version control without having to go back to this console. Now, this is going to do the exact same thing as this, right? So we can stage this for commit. So now it's ready to be committed. That's the equivalent of running git add, and we can see this over here by saying git status. You'll notice now that it turned green and it says it's ready to be checked in. Now, normally we would come in here and say git commit -m added my middle name. That's the way we've been doing it. We can also do it in here by just adding a commit message. Added my middle name, and then clicking the checkbox. Each one of these boxes or little icons in here is going to tell you what it does if you just hover over it. So I'm going to continue to encourage you to work inside the console because I think that's a valuable skill that you're going to use forever. But just know that Visual Studio Code knows all about your project, knows about GitHub, knows about the status of Git. Right now it's telling us this file has been modified and hasn't been checked in. But as soon as I click this checkbox and I click commit, it's checked in. But it's not been pushed up to GitHub yet. Okay? So our repository is correct now. It's going to say we're up to date. But it's saying this line here, I don't know if you guys saw this when you were doing your homework today, it's saying my branch main is ahead of the branch that's on GitHub by one commit. We have done more things on our side than has been done on GitHub. Okay? If you click on these 3 little dots up in here, you get all of those options that you have in GitHub. So we're going to do git push. Okay? No. Okay? If we come in here and check now, we say git status. Now it's going to say your branch is up to date with origin main on GitHub. And if we just go in and verify this, now we should see my middle name in here. Does anyone have any questions? So we've got 2 different ways to interact with Git. We've learned the console way. I would encourage you to continue using the console way, but you have the ability inside of your text editor to do all the things we've been doing manually. You can do it here with button clicks and working through menus. Does everyone kind of understand that? And now you'll notice that this file, which had an M and was orange before, is back to being just regular white. So, over on the left, we've got our Project Explorer, right? That's this list of files. We have the ability to search. We can find and replace. We can search in the entire project, which will become very important as you start working on bigger programs. This is the version control, source control. Running and debugging. If we were working on a programming language like C or C++, remember how I was telling you integrated development environments have all this extra tools? Visual Studio doesn't come with that out of the box, but all those modules mean that some languages have running and debugging support, and we can install those modules to do some things to make us a little bit more efficient. So Visual Studio Code is a really good in-between of the expensive full-on IDEs and crappy text editors like Notepad. And then down here, this is where you would go and get extensions. So these are the extensions that we've installed. So if you click on this, Leah, do you have any other extensions installed on yours already, or?
I have one for C, but
Oh, perfect.
yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do to make our project, our experience with Visual Studio Code quite a bit easier over time. And what I have found is that every time I go to a new job or I get a new computer, I just start to naturally accumulate some extensions that do things usefully. And just like with everything else, if you're thinking that it can be done with Visual Studio Code but you don't know how to do it, if you turn to Google and you just type in what you're looking for, someone will tell you what project to do or what extension to install. And you can search. So if we wanted to add a JavaScript widget, right, we can just type that in the search box and install. We're not going to do that yet because that's a little ahead of us. But one that we are going to do, and we're going to use this today, is Markdown. Okay. So let's just click on this first one, I guess. Not the install button. Yeah, perfect. Cool. So we're going to install this first one and see what it does. If you ever install an extension and you don't like it, you can come in here and uninstall it or disable it. Right? There's going to be some things that these extensions are going to do that you're eventually going to be like, I don't like how that works. You can uninstall it and try something else. This can be as flexible or as customized as you want it to be. Got it? All right. Close this extension description. What is next? Cool. So these are some of the extensions that we've had the students install in the past. Bracket pair colorizer, that's a very good one. So let's just run through and start installing some of these together. All right. First, we're going to go to the extensions thing. Bracket pair colorizer. And if you don't click the install button right away like I did, if you just click on the thing, it's going to pull up information about that plugin. It will tell you what it does. So what makes bracket pair colorizer useful is that it's going to make sure that the starting bracket and the ending bracket, when you're writing code, match with color, and it shows a line drawing it to it. I would say 60% of all programming errors that I've ever seen in my entire lifetime have to do with brackets being misplaced. The other example that causes quite a bit of frustration is missing a semicolon at the end of your line. What else do we want to add? So has everyone caught up and added this bracket pair colorizer? Yep. Next, code spell checker. Let's check that one out. Okay. This is a really useful thing to make you look more professional, right? If you're saying, first value, you can see they've got a kind of a GIF here that shows you what it does. You put 2 L's in value, it's going to give you those same kind of squiggly lines that you see in Microsoft Word and places like that. So that seems pretty useful, right, for preventing us from making mistakes. So let's install that as well. EJS language support. Let's see what that is. Syntax highlighting for EJS, JavaScript, HTML tags. This is something we're going to definitely get to later on in the course, but for now, we're just going to remember that this exists. We're not going to install it. Okay. Indent rainbow. That sounds interesting. Makes indentation easy to read. Can you guys see? It's kind of very faint here on this thing, but every time we move up an indentation level, it's changing the color of that indent. That one's pretty useful as well. It makes it easier to know how much tabs you should use. So we'll install that. Live SAS compiler. Yeah, we're going to get to that later. Live server. This sounds interesting. Excellent. All right, so launch a local development server with live reload features. This is going to be a super powered tool for you as we move into development. So when you're working inside of a real environment, you're going to have real servers hosted by Amazon or Heroku or Google. But when you're developing, you need a server on your computer so you can test the things that you've been building. So we're going to install this and see how it works for us as we start developing. And we'll touch on some of this today probably as we start dabbling with Markdown. Go ahead, Gregory.
Is it like a virtual machine server?
Nope. In this case, it's just running software that is telling your, so in the example they're showing over here on the right, I don't know if you can make this out, but it's giving you an IP address, and your IP address is 127.0.0.1, and it's saying on port 3500, I'm going to have like a tiny little web server that if I've got this file in here, index.html, it will load that and send it back to my browser.
So it actually is an actual server that you connect to, right?
Yep, and it's just going to run it on your machine while you're working. So that one's going to be real useful. We can play with that in a little bit. Prettier, Prettir. I think this has to do with cleaning up your code and making sure everything looks nice. Yeah, it's a code formatter. And it works with a bunch of different types of languages. So that's a pretty good one. Well, let's add that. Okay. Regex Previewer. Yep, that one's going to be really useful when we start getting into JavaScript and regular expressions. You guys are going to have a ton of fun with regular expressions because they let you do a lot of really cool stuff with strings. Right? So it lets you find parts of a word, cut out parts of a word, take just the username of an email address. You can do all of that with regular expressions in a very short, tight little package like this. So we're going to install that as well. Okay. And then VS Code icons. Oh, yep, it's adding some icons to let you know what the file is over in the project. That looks really useful. So let's install that. And we will say VS Code icons. Perfect. So if we go to our project now, we can see we've got some little things that tell us what we got here. And I don't know if you can kind of make that out, but we've got a little get symbol next to the getignore file we have. And we have a M with a down arrow for Markdown. Okay. Go ahead, Andrew.
There's one more that I've used in the past that I found that was handy. It's called Path IntelliSense.
Okay, Path.
And it basically helps you autocomplete
Yeah.
file path extensions.
Yeah,
or
that's
help find them.
That is an excellent suggestion. Let's all install it. It looks good to me. And I'm going to take a note so we tell people to use this next time. Path IntelliSense. And to be honest with you, almost every plugin I use on a daily basis came exactly from a recommendation like that, where a coworker would be like, I found this awesome new plugin and it makes it, I can create a template file in 3 seconds, right? That kind of thing is really useful, and you'll start to build up a list of plugins that you use and recommend to others. So excellent. What else do we want to explore in here, right? So we've looked at the file explorer. We know how to add new files. So this adding a new file will create a file that we can then save into our project that we have open. One of our plugins right here says select a language. So we've installed a lot of these language options. So in this case, let's say it is a Markdown file. Right now it's untitled, but we're going to go in here and say, read me, we'll say like, how to contact me, right? And you'll say Eric Harrison, and we'll put an email address in. Eric Harrison. I'll use my other address. RH at the clubhouse. Okay? So if everyone's following along, we just created a new file. It did not add it to our project yet because we haven't saved it. But as soon as I click Save As, it's going to let me pick a file name. So I'm going to say contact.md, or it's already going to save it as Markdown. Okay. So now I've got contact.md in here. And you're going to see that it gives you a green indicator letting us know that this is not checked into version control, which we can see here by doing get status. Right? We can see that there's a brand new file. For the sake of continuing the tradition of building on the work we did yesterday, I'm going to add it from here. Git add dot. You'll notice that Visual Studio should, in theory, as soon as you change back to that window, it lets you know this has been recently added, but it's new. You can see that it's staged. So we just staged it by saying git add. I could have just as easily clicked the plus button right here. I can unstage it from here as well, right? If I click the minus button, see that it goes from staged to this is changed. And we can come over here and say get status, and you see it goes back to being unstaged. So we're going to add it. We're going to say add contact information file. Great. Okay. So now this file exists in our project. We now have 2 files in our repository, or 3 if we have git ignore as well. Excellent. So we've learned about how to add extensions. We learned about how to make our Visual Studio code grow with us over the course of our career. As we go to new jobs, we're going to constantly be adding and subtracting extensions to make us more efficient. This will continue to be a useful thing that you do long term. We went over some of the source control stuff. We showed off that when there's changes to our files, I can put it in my website, harrison.info. Right? This file is not saved, but we've edited it. Now version control lights up with a little 1, letting us know that we've got one file that's changed. We can stage it from here. We can commit from here. Added website. We can commit, and we can also, through this 3-arrow pull down, the 3-dot pull down menu, we can push this to the server. Okay, and vice versa. If we're working on a project that has updates in GitHub, we can pull that down so that we'll automatically start to retrieve all the things that are ready for us to work with. Okay. We installed some information about IntelliSense. We're really going to learn more about IntelliSense quite a bit later when we start on the programming side of things. IntelliSense is a really cool completion mechanism so that as your project starts to grow, you're going to have things like functions in here that you're going to use over and over again. IntelliSense is going to suggest, if you start typing the word, here, let's make a JavaScript file just so I can show an example. New file, and we'll say index.js, and let's say var name equals Eric, right? Name. All these little words that are popping up in here are things that the system thinks you can do to this this variable. So that's IntelliSense. And if I wanted to pick one of these things, I could just hit tab, right? But name.length. Console.log. Name.length. Right? So as you're working, this is one of the reasons why we would want to install, we would want to make sure that the language is correctly detected, because all of that IntelliSense and all those nice features are console name fully deprecated. I literally just had it up here. So we will learn to explore IntelliSense quite a bit later when we actually dive into the programming side of things. But just know that IntelliSense is a thing that lets you quickly access all of the properties and access all of the functions that exist within your project, so that you can easily review how it goes. So array, yeah, right. So if I'm going to start typing array, I can hit enter, and then these are all the arguments that array has, right? So I could do array toString, right? IntelliSense kind of explains what you're doing. So when you're getting in the programming and you're not sure if a function does a certain thing, IntelliSense puts that right at your fingertips so that you don't have to go and jump to documentation and look on Google, right? We'll cover the command palette after break. Terminal. Let's pull up a terminal, right? So by default, when we just installed Visual Studio Code, it doesn't have a terminal in here, but it's there, it's just hidden. So if I click terminal, and I would encourage you all to click this now, you're going to get a terminal for whatever version of system you're using. So by default, we're getting PowerShell, right? So it's going to show a PowerShell console in here. It's similar to the Bash console for us Windows folks that we've been using all day, but it's PowerShell, so it's a little bit more powerful. It has some of the same functions that we've been using up till now. So we can CD around, we can look at things, we can theoretically do Git work from here. But what we're going to want to do is change this from PowerShell to Bash, and we're going to do that by selecting. Actually, I think we have to install it first. So we'll do that after break as well. But there is a terminal here. You will also have a debug console for certain languages and certain functions that you're going to do in here, and an output if you've got tasks or extensions, right? So we can see all the stuff that have been happening behind the scenes. Visual Studio Code has been tracking that for us, right? So when we go into here, right, and if we click this, yep, it did a git add. It's doing all of this verbose stuff so that it can keep track of all the changes that have been made to Git. But you can see it started with git add index.js, and then it did a whole bunch of stuff to get like what all has changed. This is what it's doing behind the scenes. And if there were any problems, if we were using a language like JavaScript or something like that, where we know where Visual Studio is tracking for us debugging information, this would all show up here as well. And this will all become very clear when we start actually doing development later on. So just for now, just be aware that your terminal, if you ever want to see it, you click New Terminal. If you don't want to see it, you want to have more room for coding, you can close it out. But New Terminal. Got it? Every time you click New Terminal, it's opening a new terminal, which is annoying. So in theory, you should only have one of these up at a time. You should never really need multiple. But if you did, for some reason, clicking New Terminal is actually creating two. So if you wanted to like look at something from a different folder, right, and compare them, you could do so by having multiple terminals up. Any questions about Visual Studio Code? We're going to definitely, after break, we're going to start learning Markdown, and we're going to dive into that. We're going to start writing some code that is a markup language. Yeah, go ahead, Gregory.
Can you just help me with something off on break real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Share your screen.
I was trying to listen on and also try to do because I was stuck on Global North and I was trying to figure out the best I could but
Yep, share your screen and we'll take a look at where you're at.
Yeah, just stop sharing. Yeah, see my screen?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So what part are you stuck on?
My get ignored.
Okay. Yeah, so this get ignore needs to be named .get ignore. So what you can do is right click on this and go to rename and change that to .get ignore and take out the word global at the end. Yep. Perfect. And then hit enter. And so now it's telling you that you need to check that into version control. So over on the left, that little blue 1 in your version control, it's the third thing down. More to the left. Yeah, right there. Click on that. Oh, yeah, click it. Sorry, I was. Yep. So now, if you click the plus sign, it's going to stage that. And then you can add a commit message up in that little message box.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then click the checkbox. Yep. So now, what he's done is he's just renamed his file. He changed it here inside of Visual Studio Code instead of doing it in his console, and he's committed it to the system. Now, if you click on those 3 dots that are right next to the checkbox up there, over the checkbox you just clicked on the Visual Studio Code. Yep. You can go to push, select push there.
Oh, really?
Yep, and that's going to push it up to GitHub.
I like this one better. I gotta log in.
Yeah, we can fix that later too, for sure. If this kind of thing happens to anybody else, it's because we have not set up our GitHub permissions correctly.
Okay. I like this one better.
Yeah, it's easier, right? You can click on it. But unfortunately, if you ever go to a place where you don't have this exact program, which might happen all the time, it's way more important that you know the commands. And to be brutally honest, like when you guys are going to interview for your jobs, these are the types of things people ask on interview questions. How would you check something out of Git on a GitHub? How would you add a file? How would you revert to a previous version, right? Like these are super common things that you're expected to know as a software developer. Even though we have this excellent tool here that makes it really easy, saying I would use Visual Studio Code and click the checkbox is probably not the right answer to an interview question, right? So it's very, very important that as we're doing this for the next 12 weeks or so, I would urge you very strongly to do things the hard way whenever possible. So continue to keep going back to your bash prompt, or in the Mac case, the terminal, and do things that way. Okay. We've been going for about an hour now. We've covered installing Visual Studio Code. The rest of the day is about learning how to work inside this environment. We're going to continue to work on it with GitHub, but we're going to work on learning Markdown for the first time. You guys have been secretly doing Markdown this whole time by editing these .md files like readme.md and contact.md, but the Markdown format, Markdown is a markup language, essentially. It's kind of like a lightweight version of HTML. You're going to use this all the time. I use this to take notes, right? This is a format that I use. We're going to start diving into this when we get back from break. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right. It is 6:02. Let's come back at like 6:17. That gives you like 15 minutes. Stretch your legs, get a drink. Gregory, stick around, and I will try to help you make sure that your Git is set up correctly.
All right.
Hopefully everybody is back from a nice little break. We're going to get started again. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to touch on one more last thing of Visual Studio Code before we jump into Markdown. Okay? Share my screen. Bloop. All right. Just like with every other text editor or every other program in Windows, there are a bunch of keyboard shortcuts you're going to use all the time. And just for the sake of making sure everybody is kind of aware that these exist, Control-C is copying. For the Mac folks, Command-C. Paste is Control-V or Command-V on Mac. Cut is Control-X. Undo is Control-Z. So if you type something and it's wrong, you can hit Control-Z a bunch of times to get back to where it was, right? And that's really useful as a text editor because it's going to undo some changes as you've been working. Control Y does a redo and adds things in. So if you've gone back too far, Control Y will get you back to where you started. Okay. Word wrap is Alt Z. So if your line is too long, by default it's gonna just keep going. Oh, Alt Z is already on. So you can see there's a difference if by default it looks like word wrap has been turned on when we just installed Visual Studio Code. But if you ever wanted that to be turned on or off, Alt Z will toggle between those two modes. Okay. Toggle comment to current line or highlighted text. Control /. What that's going to do is it's gonna turn it into a comment in whatever programming language we're in. So you see, this assumes this is Markdown or HTML, so it added a comment. So this won't display anymore if it's in a Markdown editor. If we were in our JavaScript file, right, that same thing is going to put 2 slashes because that's the comment mechanism for JavaScript. So Control/ or Command/ will do that on your Mac. If we want to move between tabs, Control Tab will let you pick them from this list, right? So I can open my settings window, or I can open index.js, right? And insert a line before is Control Enter, right? It's going to always give you a new line on the line below, right? So if I'm right here and I wanted to add a line of code here, if I hit Enter, it's going to move everything down. If I hit Control Enter, it's going to insert a line below. Those are really useful things. You're going to use those keyboard shortcuts all the time, and I will provide a cheat sheet of all of those in the course later on today. Some other interesting things. These are Visual Studio Code specific. These are keyboard shortcuts to help you navigate around. So finding your next match, right? So if we're doing a search, which is Control F. Here, let's put in a couple different things. Eric. We'll put in some words. ASDF, right? Bunch of nonsense. We're gonna find Eric. Right? It knows there's 3 of 3. I can do Control D and cycle. Control D and cycle between them. Okay. Alt click is really, really cool. So if I hold down Alt and I click a couple different places, you can now see I have 3 cursors, right? And so I can start typing, hello, my name is Eric, and it's added 3 lines exactly the same. That's an interesting thing, and you'll do it every once in a while. But like, if we're editing a bunch of files, or if we wanted to take out a bunch of stuff, we said, I wanted to take out these lines, I can come up here and just hold backspace, all right? Because it's created multiple cursors. Okay, so let's undo everything, get back to where we were. So I'm just hitting Control Y a bunch of times to get us back to where we were. Great. And then Control S is obviously saving, and Control Space is going to trigger IntelliSense. So we were talking about IntelliSense earlier. When you start programming, whatever context you're in, it's going to give you a list of what choices it thinks you're allowed to type. So if we're on Markdown, for example, we'll test what happens in here. Control Space, it's giving you a bunch of options for Markdown. Okay. So Control Space is important because it's going to get you into IntelliSense. Alt and clicking is going to create multiple cursors so that you can write a bunch of words at the same time. Those are important ones. So what is Markdown? Markdown is at its core text that a system knows how to do something with it. So Markdown is a beautiful format that basically a lot of websites, Git in specifically, and that's what we're going to talk about today, will convert a specific type or style of text into beautifully styled web page, basically. So this is like building a document that will become a website in easy mode. So why does this matter? Let's open up GitHub. So the document that we all created today as a part of our homework is a readme.md. MD stands for Markdown format. And what that correlates to is you can see when we pull up our file, we have week 1 with a little pound sign next to it, and then below it, Eric Ryan Harrison. Behind the scenes, Markdown is converting week 1 into a level 1 heading and making it really big. And it's creating Eric Ryan Harrison, because we didn't put any special codes around that word, it converted it into a paragraph. Okay? We can do a ton of things with Markdown, and I'm going to start going through those kind of one at a time. We can see what it does when we commit our changes to GitHub. So what we will do is we're going to work inside this Markdown file. All right. Another thing is I'm going to work entirely on the terminal of Git Bash that is embedded inside of here. So if you click this little drop-down option, you can choose which terminal to use. Remember how by default us Mac folk or the Windows folks we were in a PowerShell. We don't want to use PowerShell. We want to use Git Bash because that's what we spent all that time setting up. So I'm in here. This is a level 1 heading. Yeah. Who has a question? Leah?
I don't see Bash. I just see I don't see the arrow drop down.
We probably have to set this up, and that was what I was fiddling around with during break. So let's share your screen, and everyone can follow along with you while we try to get this configured. Okay.
Okay.
For you Mac folks, because your default terminal is already awesome, we don't need to change anything. It should look pretty similar to what you're doing in your terminal already. All right, so everyone can see Leah's screen. We're going to follow along with her. So, great. So you don't have an option there. Great. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to File, up in the top left, Preferences, and then Settings. It's down below Autosave, and then Settings. Okay? And then over on the left, there's a thing that says Features. If you click the arrow for Features, and you drop down to Terminal, right at the top it says there's a Explorer kind, right? That list says integrated right now. We want to select external, okay? And then that saved that information. So go to your PowerShell down in the bottom right that we were clicking on before. You should, actually let's close it first with the little X. And then go up to Terminal, run Terminal. And now drop down. Okay, we don't have an option. All right, perfect. So what we have to do is add Git Bash to, you see where it says external Windows exec? And it's got C Windows System 32 cmd.exe. What we want to put in there is this, which I just pasted into chat, which is the path to our Git Bash terminal. Okay, so now if you close out of settings, if you close your terminal down at the first new terminal, delete those real quick with the little trash can icon over on the right. Delete. Okay, now go launch a new terminal. Still no option, huh? Select your terminal settings. I wonder why yours is, maybe it's because yours is a little bit older version. Does everyone else have Git Bash in here? Yes? No? All the Windows folks, do you have Git Bash as an option in your dropdown?
No, I can't find it. Well, for me, I can't find it.
Okay. We'll fiddle with that tomorrow. For the rest of today, rather than getting hung up on this, we're going to just power through. And so what we'll do is we'll use the built-in version of Git that we've been using before. Does everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll just use this for today, right? So first, let's get everything all kind of synced up. Let's commit. So we'll say testing index.js. So I'm just doing this so this is all clean and tidy. Commit. Oh, it's telling me I have a bunch of changes. So I'm hitting Control Z in these files. They go back to how they were before I was showing you a bunch of stuff. Save. Save. I click the checkbox, and I'm going to push. So now we're all synced up. Okay? So, Markdown. This, as we saw in GitHub, creates a level 1 heading. So we'll type along. We'll just make notes in this README file. Level 1 heading. Okay. A level 2 heading is 2 pound signs. Level 2 heading. Okay. 3 pound signs is a level 3 heading. All right. And that's as far as we're going to go. We're going to save this work, stage it for commit, and then check it in. So we'll say added level headings to README. Click the checkbox and push. As soon as that's uploaded in GitHub, we can reload, and we now see the difference between those various types of headings. Level 1 heading is the biggest, level 2 heading is kind of in between, level 3 heading is the last smallest, right? Is everyone kind of following along? We tracking?
Give me a second.
Okay, take your time. Okay.
I cannot send it.
What is it doing?
Oh, I'm trying to find the send button. The push.
Yeah, it's under the 3 dots and then push.
Not push. Oh, it's in that other one. All right,
Yep.
bet.
I think it's always under the 3 dots. Yep. All right, so those are headings. By default, when you're typing in Markdown, anything that has spaces between it but it's just regular words is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. A paragraph can be long or short. It is entirely up to us. We can put headings anywhere. In between paragraphs is a good spot for headings, right? So now we've typed a bunch of information into our boxes, and we'll just upload it to GitHub and see what it looks like. So for this, instead of using this mechanism, I'm going to pull up git bash so we can continue practicing our commands. I'm going to go to week 1. Okay, git status, and we can see that README has been modified. We're going to do git add README, git commit -m, added some paragraphs, git push, and we've uploaded to GitHub. Okay, whether you do it through the console like this or you do it through Visual Studio Code, it's going to have the same effect. It's doing the same things behind the scenes. But now when we go to GitHub, we can see that we've got 3 paragraphs and that we've got a nice heading in between those paragraphs. Okay, you all following along so far? Yes, Gregory?
Yeah, can you slow down real quick? What was the command? GitHub comment M.
Yeah, git commit -m, added some paragraphs, or you can put whatever commit message you want. And now you guys are starting to see how using Git, you're going to do this 50, 60 times a day, right? Whenever we're ready to make a change, whenever we're ready to save our work, we're always adding, we're always committing. These sorts of things will become second nature to you. You'll do them just like breathing. When I'm working on stuff at home and we're making grocery shopping lists, I'm over here trying to check in my grocery list, right? Because it's just built in. Plus, it's a great way to track what you've bought in the past, right? Git is a super good tool for grocery lists. All right, so we're all here. Your GitHub should look kind of similar to this, right? You've got a couple of headings. We've got a couple of paragraphs. We've put a heading in between. Now, if we wanted to make something important or something stand out through emphasis, we're going to want to use bolding, right? And so we can wrap any of these paragraphs. We can put 2 asterisks, which is Shift 8, around any word we want. And we can include it around multiple words, right? And you'll see in our text editor, because we added Markdown as a language type, it is telling us, it's kind of giving us a hint what it's doing. So now that it's wrapped around with asterisks, it changed the look of the words that we wrapped, right? So if I commit this information, and I'm going to do it with stage by clicking the plus, added some bold words, right? I'm going to click the checkbox. I'm going to click push. And when we come over here and reload, we're going to see, it's kind of hard to tell at this stage, but you can see paragraph is bolded now, and long or short is bolded, right? So it's the same sort of bolding that you're used to in Microsoft Word or in any other tool that you've used, right? Great. So that's bold. If we wanted to make something italicized, we would use 1 asterisk, right? So for the sake of argument, let's say long is bolded and short is asterisked, right? Italicized. So clicking that in, it's going to obviously, you can see that it's giving you a hint that it's been italicized in your editor, but when we upload this to GitHub, this will be nicely rendered. Now, just so we can keep chugging along, because this is kind of the easy parts, we're just gonna stage this change, added italics, right? But we're not gonna push. We don't need to. We can just trust that this worked. Okay. If we wanted to quote somebody, this is useful when you're building a page. You want to provide like a block of information that we're saying comes from somebody else. So we can say like, we would use the left caret or the greater than symbol and say, worker bees can leave, even drones can fly away, the queen is their slave. Right? We've made ourselves a cute little haiku from the book Fight Club. Okay? Quotes are cool. Okay, so we just added another paragraph. And we're going to say added a haiku. We're going to commit. We're going to save and commit. We're going to push. And then when we reload over here in GitHub, we can see that it gave us like this nice little indent where it says worker bees can leave, even drones can fly away, the queen is their slave. Now, here's a quick question. We have this in our version as 3 different lines, but in GitHub, when it's displaying this, it's got it all smushed onto 1 line. Does anyone have any ideas of why that is?
Say that again.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you think?
Because the way it reads it, it's all inline content.
Yeah. Now, there is a way to make it so that it stops doing that, and I believe on GitHub, though I'm not sure if they have this supported, it would be putting 2 spaces at the end of your word. So if you just hit spacebar twice, in theory, I think this will work. So we'll just test it and see what happens. Add spacing. So if we commit and push and reload, yeah, perfect. 2 spaces. So 2 spaces at the end of the line is going to give you just a quick little line break. By default in HTML, we're going to learn about this quite a bit tomorrow. Everything is all 1 line. So when you start typing a paragraph, even if you've added white space, HTML is going to ignore it. So everything is always going to be smushed together. Behind the scenes, even though we're writing Markdown right now, GitHub is taking this Markdown, this syntax that we're typing in here with all these special characters, and converting it to HTML. Okay? So the behaviors of HTML are going to be replicated by the behaviors of Markdown because one is being converted into the other. Okay? If we wanted to make a list of things, right, we could do, let's add a new heading, fun with lists, right? And we'll say 1, buy cat food, 2, buy dog food, 3, buy cocktail mixes, right? So we've just given ourselves a little grocery list, right? That will create an ordered list, and an ordered list is going to be numbered, okay? If we wanted to make an unordered list, which is a unordered list next, we'll say ordered list, unordered list. We would put in a dash, a single dash. So unordered list, these are things, you don't need to have them with numbers. So you can say, have fun, learn Markdown, sleep, right? So I've saved this file. You can tell that it's been modified because it gave us the M. We're going to stage that change by clicking the plus, and we're going to commit it and saying, added some lists. Push. Okay. If we return to our Markdown, we can see an ordered list is exactly what it seems like. It's using numbers. An unordered list is going to use dots. Okay. Everybody following along so far? We've covered bolding, we've covered paragraphs and headings, we've covered lists, we've covered quotes. Okay. Now, as a software developer, when you're doing things like this and you're writing usually you'll use Markdown for documentation. One important aspect that you're going to use pretty frequently is you're going to be showing off syntax of things to do. So for that, we're going to use a code block. Okay, and a code block uses a tilde or the backtick, which is on your tilde key. So it's right up there directly to the left of the 1. It's a backtick. So anything in between backticks is going to be treated as code. And so we could say var name equals Eric, right? And you could see that it changed this styling inside of our editor to look kind of code-like, right? It changed it from nice, pretty letters to kind of a gray background. It put a little box around it. And let's say we're going to put in a heading that says code below, right? So if I save this file, if we commit it, we'll do it through the bash here. Git status, git add readme, git commit -m, added some code blocks, git push, and it's done the same thing that we've been doing for the last hour or so over here on the left. But now when I reload this page, you can see what that code block does. It really lets you say like, oh my gosh, this has all been nice, pretty words. This is some code. So when you're doing documentation for your projects, you're going to often want to show off how to use it inside of GitHub. This is the best way to do it, was by using that code block, which is just the 2 backticks, right? All right, now if we wanted to put links to somewhere, right, because we built all this wonderful documentation, but we want to link it to an external website, this is when the formatting starts to get kind of cool and weird. So I can say, if you are interested in reading about me, please visit my website at ericharrison.info, and then we put https ericharrison.info. So the link format is whatever you have in this box is going to be displayed as the link. Whatever is right next to it inside of the parens is going to be the actual link, right? So we could do anything in here. We could say, we can come down here and say like, check out Google, right? We can turn this into a link by saying this is a box, and then we say https google.com, right? Does everyone understand the link syntax? So the syntax for it is, here, let's use a code block. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, that's the syntax. We can say title of link, web address, right? And this has to be like HTTPS web address .com, right? So let's see what that looks like on GitHub. We're going to say added some links, commit, and push. And now when we go check it out, we now have the format for making links, and you can see those 2 examples. We can say this is my website, and it's a link to my website. And you can say check out Google, and it's a link to Google. Right? So everyone understands, if you want to add some links to something, it can be to other documents, it can be to another repository on GitHub, you can link to anything you want using this link syntax, which is square brackets and then parens with the link in it. Now, let's get fancy. Let's find a good image. We're gonna look for an image of a cat. This little guy is super duper cute, so we are gonna click on him and copy link address. All right. If we right click and copy link address, we're actually gonna get a link straight to the image. Though I would be willing to bet, yeah, it's taking us to a stupid website. So we're gonna do it on this website. Oh, come on. Stupid. Let's pick something else that works. Let's go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not bad to us. Okay. Let's search Wikipedia for a cat. And we're going to copy image address. Right click, copy image address. So you should have an image like this that loads just this. Okay. Is everybody at this step? And I'll paste this in chat too, so you guys can just grab it if you're not already at Wikipedia. Okay, so that's the link to the image. Now, what we can do inside of our code, if we want to add an image, is it's very similar to the link format. So we'll say images look like this. And we can say it uses an exclamation point, the link text, so we can say like text for screen readers, and then the image URL, right? So the text for screen readers part is important. We'll do it like this, image URL. So using our cat that we put in here, we can say cats, and then we can say, we can put in that image that we found, right? So it looks like a link, but by putting this exclamation point in front of it, it's going to try and load it and embed it in an image tag. And when we show off, this word cats is really important from an accessibility standpoint, and I'll show you what that looks like online. We're going to say added some images. We're going to click the check and push. And you can see now we've got a beautiful image of a bunch of different cats inside of our thing. Now, what is the purpose of that alt text? If this image was broken, right? If I had put in an incorrect image, we can say it gives you some context around what was supposed to be there. This is useful if you're linking to an image that no longer exists in the future. We can say like, this is supposed to be a picture of cats, right? Then we put in the image. Oh, copy the whole thing. But let's say we break this link, right? We put in it's an incorrect image, right? So we can just take stuff out. Right? So now this is definitely not going to load. Everything's going to be bad. Garbage, right? There's garbage in here. So adds broken image. Push. So when we load our page, this is what you get. This is the error message. It says this is supposed to be a picture of cats, and a link to that thing. That link doesn't exist, obviously. You can't load it as an image, but there's still information about what was supposed to be there all the time. That's called alt text, and we'll learn more about that when we start learning about HTML tomorrow. Okay. Now, we've got a whole bunch of content in here. We've been putting things in with headings. Now, if we wanted to separate a bunch of big sections, like we wanted to say this is fun with list was awesome. We were learning about text up here, but now we're getting into images and code and stuff. So if we wanted to add a separator, we could use 3 dashes. Okay? 3 dashes is going to put a horizontal line across this information. And that will look like this. Added a line. Push. And you'll see. Did it push already? It's still pushing. It gets just a big separator. So as you're writing a big document, as you're wanting to keep things neat and orderly and putting them in sections, every once in a while you'll want to put in a line that separates chunks of content. Now, onto other fun stuff, right? So we've learned about images, we've learned about links. Let's put in a horizontal line, and let's work with fun with tables. Right? So if you want to make a table, this is where things start getting kind of wonky. You're going to put a up and down pipe, which should be directly above your enter key usually on most keyboards, and it's shift and then like the backspace. So this is the backslash. Okay. If you push shift backslash, it gives you a pipe. Okay. Has everybody found the pipe key? Okay. So whatever we put here at the very top is going to be the table headings, right? So we can put like name, pipe, email, address, pipe, phone number, and then we end it with pipe. Then we go to the next line, and we can put in a bunch of blocks like this, right? Then we can put in Eric, Eric RH at the clubhouse. Yes, Gregory. And put in 219-777-16.
Oh, never mind. I was like making drop bosses or something like that.
What was the question?
No. I thought I was about to ask. I was making drop bosses, but never mind.
Yep, this is a table, so I think this will work. I don't use tables very often, but it's really useful for displaying a bunch of content in rows and things. So let's just see what this looks like. Adds a table. Right? And if we push it up to here, we now see that we've got a table of data. And so we can come in here and we can keep adding content without having to worry about formatting or structure. So I could put Andrew, right? Fake at fake.com. 1222 right? We could put in Wendy, right? Also fake at fake.com. 222 444, right? And so this is just going to keep building that table so that you can display tabular data. This is really good for numbers and statistics. I mean, you guys have probably used tables 1,000 times in school in various papers and essays. And we will use tables quite a bit in web development because you use it pretty often for user interface things. So table examples. Okay. Now, we were talking about code blocks. So we said code examples look like this. Code examples. Okay. We learned about the backtick, and we can say a code example uses the backtick. If you wanted to do multiple lines of code, there's a better thing for this, and that would be 3 backticks. Now this is going to be multi-line. So anything I type in between 3 backticks is going to preserve the formatting and let me put in code. So code here. This is code. Right. So let's put in a line that separates our table from our code example. So we learned about the single line code example with backticks. And we learned about multi-line. So when you're starting to describe your work, if you guys were building, when we start building node modules, you'll probably use this pretty frequently. And we'll say code examples. Oh, I forgot to save. So we're going to stage code examples, and we're going to push. And so what this looks like, this is a single line. We learned about this up above when we were using it to describe how we do our things. And this is multi-line. So you can see that it like preserved a block of code for us, and the indentation we used was preserved, right? You guys following along? If you guys wanted to add a footnote, if you guys are doing documentation, I don't use this very often, but it is useful if you're writing more of a formal paper. So let's talk about footnotes. Let's say you're writing a paragraph. This is a long paragraph, and I want to cite my sources at the end, right? You would do a bracket, shift 6, which is going to give you that up arrow caret. I'm going to put the number 1. And then somewhere down at the bottom of the page, you're going to do 1. Okay, and then we can say, this is my source, right? This is really cool because if you're writing a lot of paragraphs, that can be a footnote right there, and I can keep typing. I can say, I love writing research papers. This is fun. And we can do 2. And we can come down here and we can copy the whole line, paste it, and put 2. This is my second source. Okay. And we can keep writing paragraphs. Horses are interesting and enjoy eating carrots. 3. And then you can imagine we just keep going on and on. Right? You can do this as many number of times. Horses really like veggies. Right? So if we save our work, and we're going to use here, we're going to do git status. We've already staged it, so we're going to do git commit -m added some citations. Git push. Okay. And we come over here and we see what that does. Okay. So apparently GitHub, their version of Markdown doesn't use citations. So this won't work on GitHub. I didn't know that. Some Markdown providers, which you'll see on, you'll see Markdown all over the place when you start looking for it. You're going to see it in project management software. You're going to see it in certain websites you use. You're going to start seeing this all over the place now. They don't all offer the same features. So I'm going to give you a GitHub cheat sheet later today. And it's going to have a big list of all these things that you can do. But some things may not work on GitHub. Right? So now we know footnotes don't work. We have learned our lesson. Great. If we needed to say, here's a great example. Footnotes are currently broken. We have a cool function here called a strike through, where we can use the tilde, which is shift and the number next to 1. It's right above the backtick. We can use a tilde, and it's going to strike through something that's there. So that's really good if you can be like, this is currently broken. When it's fixed, you can strike through the thing that says this is currently broken. And it's just it's a cutesy way of changing some content to remove some text. The last thing that I think is really useful, let's say list of things to do. I don't know if this will work on GitHub, but we're going to figure it out. So if you do a dash and then a box, learn Markdown. We can keep a list of things that need to be done. So we can say learn Git, so we can kind of track our progress as we're working. Learn GitHub. Right, we already learned Git. We learned this yesterday, so we can mark that with an X. We learned GitHub, and we're learning Markdown right now. So this format, if it works on GitHub, will keep a to-do list, and that will show up in a kind of cool way. So let's see. Adds to-do list. Push. Okay. Yeah, so you can see, ooh, that didn't work. It's because I didn't add a space. So you have to put a space in the box as if it was an X, so that there's room for your X in the future. So that's our first bug fix. So bug fix adds missing space to box. Okay. And we commit and push. And now, yep, you can see these are 2 boxes that are checked, and this is a box that isn't checked. So these are just kind of a cutesy name. These are non-interactive in Markdown, at least on GitHub. You can't click this and say it's done. But if you're keeping a list of things like, hey, this is my project plan, this is the README file for our entire project, maybe up at the top you can be like, this is our roadmap. We're going to work on this feature, this feature, this feature, this feature. As you get those features done, you can just add an X in this little box, and it will show up because now we've learned Markdown. Complete task list, right? Oh, come on, man. I clicked the plus. And then we push, and now we can see that our last box has a check. That is Markdown in a nutshell. It's a very useful tool, especially in the context of GitHub, because GitHub is going to take any readme.md file and display that at the bottom of your project. That's just by magic conventions. They're going to assume if your repository has a file specifically called readme.md, it's going to display it in here. And so you have the ability to write really good, beautiful documentation that includes images, tables, code examples, lists of things to do. You can link to other websites. This is going to be something you're going to use pretty frequently. GitHub also reads all other Markdown files. So we made this contact.md. So if I click on this, this is that file that we were fooling around with earlier, right? And you can see that it's got the same problems that we were experimenting with today, right? So it's got everything that's in those third lines. These are all together. So we know how to fix that by adding 2 spaces. So now that's fixed. But you can write all of your documentation. I've known people, and myself included at times, we've written blog posts in Markdown and committed it to version control. People write books in Markdown. You'll just, you could use GitHub for this quite easily, where chapter 1.md, chapter 2.md, and you just start writing. You've got this really nice formatting that has all kind of the same sort of features that you're going to get in a word processor. You can bold things, you can make them italic, you can make big headings, you can add pictures. All of that can be done very easily with Markdown. It's a beautiful format that you can take with you all over the place, because behind the scenes, this is just readable text. There's nothing special in here. Whereas Microsoft Word, PDFs, those are binary files that you can't, if your version of Word is wrong, or you got an old version of Adobe, you might not be able to read that file. This is a beautiful syntax for taking documents and making them look a little bit better. And we're getting to do a lot of the things as we're entering our journey as web developers. You're going to be doing almost all of this stuff, like a level 1 heading, and we're going to learn this probably tomorrow, is H1 level 1 heading. Right? This is the exact same thing. Markdown is just saying, okay, when I get this, take whatever's after it and smush it between an H1 block. And if we come in here and we inspect this element, and I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Oh, that was an H2. If we go back to the first one, if we inspect this element, we can see, yes, indeed, that's transforming that into an H1. This one is an H2. This one is an H3, right? So this is a really great way to, you can start prototyping websites using Markdown and let it just quickly crank out some content that looks okay, right? We're obviously not going to do that all the time because we're learning to be web developers, but behind the scenes, this is exactly what's happening in Markdown. So this is really your first web page that you're building using a language that is pretty easy to work with. Does anyone have any questions about Markdown? We're going to play with it probably for the next couple hours and fiddle around with things and then kind of review all of what we've learned over the last couple days, because tomorrow we're going to dive right in and start learning programming. So what do you want to know about Markdown? Anything? Go ahead, Andrew.
Can you embed videos in Markdown?
Excellent question. Let's find out together. There might be a way. Embed video Markdown. Okay. How to embed a video in Markdown? While it's not possible to embed a video in Markdown, generally what you can do with Markdown, and this is one of the cool things about Markdown, is that you can interchange Markdown and HTML. So just because this is readme.md, if here, let's take a look at what was that video we had yesterday? Pulling up our video that we created. All right. So we're just going to YouTube. This is what we learned yesterday. YouTube has all that embed stuff. Oh, I'm not allowed to embed it, are I? Here, let's edit this video. Said it's embeddable. Wait, what? Oh, I'm not on the right account. Page we're on, we're following the instruction. So we're going to share, embed. Okay. So we can copy this embed code This is all HTML. We're going to learn about this definitely over the next week or so. We're going to copy that code, and we're going to go back in here, and we're going to say, scroll to the bottom. We'll add a line to break things up for us. I'm going to say, cool class video. Okay. We can paste in this iframe that we got directly from YouTube, and in theory, though don't quote me on this because GitHub, their version of Markdown might prevent this from happening, but we're going to test it. This should work. Embed a video. Then we push. And then we come over here and check it out. Okay. Yeah, see? They escaped the HTML. They do not want us embedding videos on this page. Okay? So, with GitHub's version of Markdown, the answer is apparently no. Other times and other places that let you use Markdown, those might allow it. Oftentimes, because we don't want to learn 50 different websites, all their stupid rules, if you just stick to the basics, headings, tables, paragraphs, links, those are almost always going to work. Some of this special stuff, you just got to test it and see if it lets you or not. Go ahead, Gregory.
Can you add sound effects or sounds into Markdown?
Yeah, that's probably going to be the same answer, which is if you can do it in HTML, on some places you'll be able to do it using the HTML. There's no Markdown tag to let you just quickly add a sound. But if you can do it in JavaScript, in some places you'll be able to do that as well. But the quick and dirty answer is generally no. Okay. What else do you guys got? Anything else? Cool. We are extremely ahead of schedule today. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to send everyone a link to a cheat sheet for Markdown. What I want you to do is in the homework that we did today, I want you to spend 10, 15 minutes. Just if you haven't been following along exactly, let's start using some of these things to make a more complex document like this. And then we're going to look at it and talk about what we've learned. Okay? So it is 7:09. We're going to come back from break at 7:20. I'm going to have a link for you at that time, and then we're going to spend 10 or 15 minutes working on our own until everybody's done. We're gonna add some images. We're gonna add some headings. We're gonna add some lists. We're gonna make this pretty robust. Okay. All right. I'll see you back here at 7:20. I guess we can do Gregory since he's sharing his screen. Gregory, why don't you share your GitHub? Just send us to the window and show off how you used Markdown to make a nice README file.
Oh boy. I basically was. So I was thinking one day, and I was doing this right here. I always want to have a business card, but have a UR code because it's to show all the information that I want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like my interest in the business, my name, where I located at, and my resume, all in a QR code on a card. So all you just scan that, and all the information is there.
Oh, that's cool. Excellent. So you kind of used yours as like a little lightweight resume about you. Excellent.
Yeah.
Who would like to go next? Anyone? Anyone want to volunteer? Andrew is volunteering. Let's go, Andrew. Show us what you got. Oh, Wendy left again. Bye, Wendy.
No.
Exercise log June. Oh, this is super creative. Nice. I love that you put in an athletic picture. Oh, you used a table very nicely.
All right, so I Yeah, I made the heading. I put a banner at the top. I did a line break. Made a table. Little quote from Arnold. And then there's some links to different workout resources at the bottom.
Excellent. Yeah, you've really grasped the spirit of what Markdown can do for you on GitHub, right? You can make entire documents and share them with the whole world without having to do anything really special, right? It's pretty easy, right? Who would like to go next? Good job. Leah. All right, take it away, Leah. Yours is about plushies.
Okay,
I love
yeah.
it. Let's go.
Yeah, so yeah, I have an image of a plushie, and like I said you want to there's a good way to make you feel safe and comfortable, and safe is in bold and comfortable is in italics, and then just a quote about them, and then an unordered list about them, and then some of the my favorite ones with like links to like where you can buy them.
Look at you. You're already marketing. You're going to be an internet
Yeah,
salesperson. I love it.
yeah, and then like the checklist on what to do, and then another quote
What
with
does it say?
strike with a strike through.
Psychopath strike through. I love it. This is super
Okay.
good. Nice job.
Thank you.
All right, who's up next? Andrew and Leah are making it tough crowd to follow.
I think that just leaves me at this point.
Yeah, go ahead, take it away. Well, Selena's here too. Maybe she's following along also.
Oh, yes. No? Okay.
She's busy with C++ class.
I missed a whole hour.
Okay, that's fine. We have videos of all of this.
Alright, so I was not that creative as they were. I just did some stuff that I've done during the pandemic. Some of the books that I read, and, read as italicized because I skimmed through Anna Karenina. That one was hard to get through. And Pandemic was pulled in because it's been rough. Shows that I've binge watched, and podcasts that I started while working at the front. I meant to start. I started 2 of them. Last one, no. And that's why we drink. One of the hosts, her name is Christine, and she made this picture while she was in high school, and it looks really inappropriate. Expose yourself to art.
I love it. Very good. Everybody did an excellent job on this. Good job, everybody. All right. So we kind of reached the end of where we wanted to be today already. We breezed through Markdown. You guys saw how easy it is to really interact with GitHub in an interesting way. And you're going to see Markdown used in a whole bunch of resources throughout the rest of your career. One that just jumps to the top of my head. Let me share my screen. There's a website called Stack Overflow. You may or may not have heard of it, but it's a resource for software developers. StackOverflow.com. And this is a website for software engineers to come and ask questions when you get stuck on something at work, or you're working on a project. In this class, you've got me as a resource, but whenever you're searching on Google, 99% of the time, your technical question is going to be answered on Stack Overflow. And so, if I click in here, right, this is Stack Overflow. People ask questions, and the question format is Markdown, right? So if I was to ask a new question, which I can't because I'm not logged in, so I can use Markdown in here to style my content as a part of the communication system. We see this in GitHub in our README files. We're going to see this in version project management software. So when you get in your first job and you're a software developer, if you're using something like Jira to manage your projects, or Clubhouse to manage your projects, when you're writing tickets and logging things, Markdown is almost always going to be one of the format types so that you can style your content and add code examples and things. So being able to do Markdown is really important. Earlier in the week, we learned how to just get familiar with ourselves in the terminal, how we can work, move around, see what files are there. ls-a lets us see some magic hidden files. We can move up, we can move down, which is really just exposure to working inside of a computer and working with the file system, which led us to day 2, where we really learned about Git and how we can version control our software. We learned we did it today in a project in homework. We did it just recently with our README files. Tomorrow we're going to do it when we start learning HTML and building real websites. So we're at a great stopping point in the sense that I don't want to start teaching you guys HTML now, because we're going to really focus on that over the next week or two, right? So the things we're doing next is going to get progressively harder, but we've learned a bunch of stuff already, and I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page so that we don't leave people behind. So one of the things that came up today that I'd love to spend this last hour just making sure we're all corrected on is making sure that you can get your Git Bash terminal for the Windows folks in here. We were having some trouble with that earlier. I think we can work through this, and I think I've got some solutions. Go ahead, Selena.
We can use myself as an example on how to fix it.
Yeah, let's do that. So we already tried walking through it with Leah. I think we got it right, but what I don't think we did was restart Visual Studio, which tells Visual Studio to do things correctly.
Okay.
So
yeah,
let's share your screen.
I missed that hour, and I think I was already behind. So
yep.
Here we go.
Perfect. All right, share your screen. We'll all take a look together. I'm going to drag this over into our recording window so that we will have this as well. All right, so if you go up to Terminal and you click that button and go New Terminal, you're going to get PowerShell. And if you click that little arrow that is next to the plus sign, what do you see as an option? Not that one. Those are terminal tabs. Yeah, so click that. So right there you have the option to click Get Bash. So now you've got a Bash terminal. The exact same thing we've been working on this whole time is now at the bottom of your text editor.
Okay.
Does everyone else on a Windows machine, if you click that little down arrow next to the plus sign, do you see Get Bash as an option? Yes? We're all good? Everybody? Sweet. So that was Crisis 1 averted. Everybody's got a terminal. We can use Git Bash. Let me share my screen again.
All right. So how do I get this over here
to
show up in GitHub?
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you clicked on the. So what this is showing you, and we can follow along in your terminal below as well. So now that you have your terminal, you're in that folder. Type Git Status. So what it's telling you on the left is the same thing it's going to tell you in Git Status. You're not in the folder. So go to CD. Week 1, I guess. Whatever your week 1 folder is that you used today. It doesn't look like you're in the folder we've been working on.
Well, yeah. See, mine's kind of messed up because I was pushing and pulling, and it put it here instead of in the one that I was trying to work out of.
Okay, so that's fine too.
So it went here.
Yeah, so pull up your code editor again. So that's where you're working from, right? So go to the Git repo folder that is inside your week 1 homework 1 folder, right?
In here?
No, in the terminal that's down at the bottom of your window.
Oh, okay.
No, you can do the one that's inside Visual Studio Code now that that's working.
Okay.
Either one, it's the same thing, right? The terminal the Git Bash that we used all week is exactly the same as what you're doing right here below. So why don't we do this? Before we do anything else, just type ls in there so we can see what is in this folder. Okay, so you want a cd to Git repo. So where you are right now in that folder, where your readme.md thing is working, is exactly the same spot you're in your bash terminal that is embedded right there, right? So if you type git status, you should see exactly the okay, yours is all kind of wonky.
Yep.
Okay, we can fix that separately.
Okay.
The problem here is that you created a Git repo inside of a Git repo because you have the week 1 folder. When you're using Git, it's going to look upwards first, not at the local directory. So go ahead, Andrew.
So that's what I did earlier when I videoed Chad Selena earlier, and we were trying to figure out that problem. Is that caused by doing a git init and then cloning a repo within a git init?
It could be. There's like 6 or 7 different ways this can happen, but it all ends up causing the same frustration in that somebody's got birds or something.
Sorry, it's my son's clock. It chirps birds every hour.
Oh boy. All right, cool. So yeah, git clone. If you clone a repo inside a repo you're already in, now you've got the same problem in that Git doesn't know which one to work on. And
Okay.
so what you really want to do is make sure that all of your repositories and all of your folders are just completely separate from each other. What I generally do on my computers is I'll make a folder in my home directory called development, and then every folder that is inside that folder is going to be a top-level project, a repository all by itself. And so I keep them separate, but it's still easy to get to. So how you're going to fix that, Selena, and how we had to fix it with Andrew, is you got 2 choices. One is you can move that week 1 folder completely out and put it in a different place. You can do that through the Finder, or in your case, if you're using Windows, you can actually use the File Explorer and just drag the folder to another location. Or you can delete the folder and recreate it in another location. Or you can delete the Git repository and just assume that that folder is a subfolder of your main project.
Okay,
So
so
what we would want to do here is if you type mv is a command we haven't really talked about, but it stands for move, space, and then week 1, because that's a subfolder that should not be in this spot, and then space, .. // Does anyone want to guess what this command is going to do? Go ahead, Andrew. What do you think?
It's gonna move it back to 2 files.
Yeah, 2 directories.
Or
Exactly. right.
move it up 2
So
directories.
it's going to take week 1 folder, which is currently a Git repository inside another Git repository, and we know that's not going to work. It's going to move it out of Git repo, and then it's going to move it out of week 1 homework 1 and just put it right inside your CBC 12 folder. So hit enter right now, and we'll see if it works. Permission denied. Why would permission be denied? It's your computer. These files belong to you. Oh my gosh, Windows is so stupid. All right. So because permission is denied for whatever reason, the easiest thing to do, let's try doing it with your File Explorer. So open up your little folder down in the bottom taskbar over next to
sorry.
oh, okay. I bet I know why permission is denied. Probably because you've got these files open in this program. So Windows is trying to protect you from making a mistake on a file you're working on. So what you would have to do is close Visual Studio altogether. Okay. Open up your Git your terminal there. Yeah, exactly. And then we're going to do where was the week 1 folder? It's like below. Yeah, it's inside here, right? Type ls. Yeah. So try it now. Say move mv space week 1 and then .. // Hit enter and we'll see if it works. Yeah, it worked perfectly. So now if we do ls, it's gone. If we do git status, it's going to say this file is gone, right? Perfect. Now cd .. Right?
Yep.
This is the same thing we've been doing before, but we combined it into one command. We're saying move up 2 directories, do an ls, okay, and then cd to week 1. Right, so there you go. Everything's perfect now. The reason it wasn't letting you move that file, move that folder the first time, is because you had it open inside Visual Studio Code, and so Windows is saying like, I can't move this file. It's in use, right? But it doesn't tell you that because the command is just kind of like permission denied, which doesn't make any sense. So now you can open up Visual Studio Code again. Okay, we want to, switch to git bash. Perfect. Now let's click on over on the left, because this is what we were really asking about, right? So inside this terminal, you know how to work with git already. You could type git add dot, you could do git commit -m. But over on the left, if you click on the middle link that has the blue number on it, this is your
That one?
Yep, this is your source control option. And so you can see it's got stage changes. So that is going to tell you the same thing that git status would tell you if you ran it down below, which is you've already said, hey, watch this file. It is now ready to be committed. It's the same as if you'd typed git add already. Okay. So what you do is you put in a message in that box right there. This is your commit message. So type in whatever you want. Updated my README. Click the checkbox directly above that thing. Yeah,
No.
The check
That one?
mark, the check mark.
Oh, the check mark.
Yeah.
I thought you said chat box.
I said checkbox, which is obviously incorrect. But I meant check mark. And then click on the 3 dots to the right of that. Yep. And you go down to push. Perfect. So that's always the flow if you're going to use the Visual Studio version, which is anytime you change a file, you've made some changes, you've made some edits, you're going to have a whole list of files on the left, and you're going to have to add them by clicking the plus sign, then commit them by adding a message and clicking check, and then push them by hitting push in the 3-dot menu. Okay?
Okay, should we be able to see it here now?
Yeah, if you reload GitHub, you should see your update. But it will be in your week 1 repo, because that's what you were working on.
Okay,
Perfect. Worked great.
sweet.
And
Thank you.
It is just that easy. Who else would like to go over something that we've covered over the last 3 days?
How do I stop?
Would we like to talk about navigating using the... Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Is there since we can do some of the similar things that we do in the terminal in Bash in VS Code, is there a way to do like git diff in VS Code?
Yeah, actually. And it's probably going to end up having better ones, right? You can do it the same way. You can do it in here. Git diff. Let's see, git log. Let's see what's in here. So we could do, just like we did yesterday, we can look at a specific thing and we can do git diff 93EA47, right?
We share your screen.
Oh, yep. I'm over here typing, and it's going to get me every single time all month long. All right, you can see my... okay, I'll just clear so that we're here. All right, so I can do it here, just like I did it from a console. We can do git log. We can say I want to git diff 93EA47. Right? So I can look at the diff in this console exactly the same as if we were doing it in this one. It's going to be it's functionally identical. Or we can come into here. Let's see. There's other ways to do this. I almost never look at them like this, but changes. Let's make a change and see if that will give us what we want. This is a change, right? So now we're in here. We've got our changes. Open changes. And so this is that side-by-side view that I was talking about the other day, where you get the same kind of concept, but you're able to see it in a linear fashion. And they've called it open changes for whatever reason, because that's a language that's kind of agnostic. It doesn't matter what version control system you're using. So you just have to remember, if I want to see what has changed, I can right-click and view open changes. There are probably also plugins, and I would be willing to bet if we went in here and searched git blame, right? See git blame information in the status, right? So this is a cool module that will let us look at any given line of code and see who the last person was that changed it. So let's just install it and see what that looks like. There's a whole bunch of tools like that in here. We could probably search for diff and see diff to files with ease, right? There are things in here that you may find that you like a lot better. There's what? We've got probably 10,000 plugins available to us, and they're all going to do pretty much the same thing but slightly different. So when we're learning the basics like git diff, it's important for you to know, no matter what we're doing behind the scenes, you can always do git diff and then look at something, or you can look at it on GitHub to see what has changed. But there's a bunch of different ways to do it all the time. Did I install git blame? I did. Yep. So let's see how this works. If I click on this, you can see that down here, Eric Harrison made this change an hour ago, and you can see what the commit was that did it. Adds a table, and I can view it on GitHub. Right? So it opened this window for me when I clicked that link. So that's a really useful plugin, and I should probably add that to the list of plugins we have you guys install. On any given line of code, especially when you're working on a team, knowing what happened and how that line of code got there is going to be very important, and you're going to do this time and time again throughout your entire career. We do this, you're going to do this in your editor here to see this git blame information down at the bottom. But oftentimes what you'll do is you'll be in here looking at code, and you can click this blame button, right? It's right here when you're looking at any kind of file that's in GitHub. It's right raw. We used this today when we were setting up profiles. This is just going to show you the source code with none of the GitHub stuff in. Okay, but blame is going to show you like a historical thing. It's telling you the history of how this file got to be here. Got it? Let's look at a real world example. What's a good project I could show? All right. Let's find a GitHub code. Try and find one of my real world repositories. Let's see. Here's a good one. This is a library that we use for web development. So let's look at includes. Go to this, and we can see the blame for this. So you can see that 11 years ago the very first lines of code were written. 4 years ago we put an author name in here. What happened recently? 7 years ago we added this variable to track the URI of this variable, right? So this kind of tool, especially as you get into collaborating with a team, is going to be extremely powerful for you for tracking down who did what, how a bug got introduced, and it will help make you guys better software developers as you go forward, right? It's called git blame, so it's kind of tongue-in-cheek to say like, this was his fault, this was my fault, but really it's more about learning how to figure out how something happened, not about actually pointing the finger. Good question. So we learned right-click open changes will show you the diff side by side. You also can always do it in this terminal, and you can always do it in a regular terminal. CD week 1, get diff readme. Right? So it's going to show you the same stuff, just kind of in a dorkier format than this version that they're giving you here. So feel free to use whichever way you want on like a daily basis, especially over the next 12 weeks. You should probably, one of the things that I firmly believe makes people better software developers, especially when they're learning, is try things a bunch of different ways. And you even see it when we're going through examples together here. I will use this version of checking in just as often as I use this version, just as often as I pull up over here, just so that I can reinforce that everything is exactly the same between those three methods, because at any given time you might be on a server. And I was doing this literally today at work. I was fixing a problem with our production code, and I'm inside. I think I did. Yeah, I pushed code up. I committed. Right. I fixed a bug. You'll do this literally daily, and so being able to do it in a server context is just as important as doing it inside of a nice, pretty editor. What else? What other questions do we have? Gregory.
Let's say if you want to, I don't know how to change it to a question. Can you change the fonts?
In your Visual Studio Code?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably in preferences. And if we go to settings.
No, not as in as you type. I'm talking about as in the final.
In
the
Markdown? like on GitHub?
I don't know how to phrase it. Like, okay, like you do it, you put a certain code to change the outlook when you finish the production of the code.
Mm-hmm.
How you change that? Like, say if you type in a paragraph, but you want to change it so it look differently on the basic on GitHub when you go to GitHub website you're looking at to change the font or color of the text or
Yeah.
style,
The
whatever.
short answer is no. Some websites that you might maybe it's Stack Overflow, maybe it's GitHub. Some of them will provide functionality to let you change colors and let you change fonts, but for the most part, no. If you want to do that kind of web development, we're going to learn that starting tomorrow in HTML, and then when we get into CSS, that's really where we're going to get to be really expressive with how things look. Markdown is
Okay.
just supposed to be like a simple document language so that I can write a document, upload it to wherever it's going to go, and it's going to look like all the rest of the things on that website. So when we're working on GitHub, like the Git blame here that we're looking at has the same style and format as the README that we created here. Like they're using the same code font. They want when we use Markdown on GitHub, it's going to represent their style in everything we do. When we start developing content of our own with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then it's up to us, and the sky's the limit. We have a blank canvas. We can design and make it look any such way we desire. But
Can we just so on JavaScript and also on HTML? Can we just copy and paste what we have on like say what we have on GitHub into the platforms?
and put it into this type of README file.
No, I was saying like because I'm thinking I was asking like say we type the work we work on. Can we transfer it into or convert it into a JavaScript or something like that? Or we have stuff like over.
Um, in this course, almost everything we do is going to be starting over because we're trying to learn together. If you've
Okay.
done stuff before, I mean, you can certainly use it as inspiration. Another thing that's really important to note, we were talking about libraries and languages today. During this course, we're probably going to use other open source content from GitHub and from other places as a part of our project, where we're going to be like, what is the function to do this? And so then we need to make sure that we respect whatever that license says. A great example, let's find, let's just find a project here. Video to Markdown, whatever this is, right? So some guy on GitHub made this Markdown repository that adds video to your Markdown, right? So Andrew, I believe, was asking about can we put videos in? Well, with this dude's version of Markdown, yes. With the GitHub version, no. But what he did was he built this platform for us to use, and he has a license in here, and his license is the MIT license, which says as long as you include this copyright notice and this license, I can use that in my project all I want. I can take his Markdown editor and build my own thing, and as long as I give him credit, I can use it. Some licenses that you'll read in here have other requirements as well. Like I could use this and build a business with his Markdown editor. I can go build my own question and answer site for software engineers, and I could use his version of Markdown and let videos be a part of it. Maybe YouTube does something like this. Maybe they're using his code. But if this was like a GNU GPL license, I would have to have whatever. If I'm using his thing, anything I'm using any of my source code would also have to be open source because of the terms of the license. So as we develop over the next 3 months together, we're going to have to pay attention to what we're using in our projects. What are the questions? Leah.
So will we ever use the bash separate program that we installed earlier? Are we ever going to use that, or are we just going to use the terminal inside of Visual Studio Code now?
It is entirely up to you. I would encourage you to be very comfortable working in either place, because just like we've been using Visual Studio to do this stuff, we could equally spend all of our day in here. We can use Nano. to edit our README file, right? Like, this is a perfectly acceptable text editor. We could do development here. We could be comfortable in here. And the example I kind of showed off earlier is I was inside my server today, right before a very big meeting with a client, editing files live on a server where all I have is this console. So I'm comfortable working in this environment, and it's really important that you guys are all comfortable working in this environment too, because you're going to find yourselves in the real world as a software developer stuck inside of a terminal. And if all you've ever gotten comfortable with is, I only know how to do it in Visual Studio, you're really doing yourself a disservice. So, you know, maybe what you do is every week you say, this entire week when I'm working on my HTML next week, I'm going to do everything in here. And when we're teaching in class, I'm going to be showing it off in here, but sometimes I'll show it off in here as well, just to let you know that everything we're doing can be done in any place. And we could pick a completely, there's another really good code editor called Atom editor, right? And this is what I used to use before I switched to Visual Studio Code. This was built by the folks at GitHub. This is their code editor, and it integrates even better with GitHub. Like, this is the GitHub code editor, and you can see it's got the same kind of stuff. It's got packages. It's got all these, like, you can extend it and make it really useful. This is a really good program, right? And it kind of looks similar. It's going to do all the same sorts of things. But what GitHub, their version of Atom, what it does really well, Andrew was talking about, you know, how do we look at the differences between files? Their version is awesome because it's integrated straight into GitHub. So you can see comments in a GitHub repository inside your code editor. You can do code reviews inside the code editor. So each editor, each environment you use for your entire career is going to do some things better than others. But behind the scenes, as long as you know this is really what's happening behind the scenes, right? This is, you know, git status is, the code editor is really just running git status and then saying, like, this file is modified. So when it gets this little M up here and says modified, it's because it ran git status. It ran it right here. And so it knows this file was changed, put an M in there. Anybody else? It's been a good week so far. Tomorrow is our last day of the week in class, and it's important for you guys to be aware that class starts tomorrow at 3:30, not 5. And the reason it starts at 3:30 is that every Thursday for the entire length of the class, except for 1 week in the middle, we have a guest speaker. And so tomorrow the guest speaker will come out at 3:30, talk to everybody for about an hour. Let me see if I can find what they're talking about tomorrow. Let's see. Drive. We're going to go to speakers. Maybe. Yeah, so no, that's not the right file. Shared with me. Yeah, so tomorrow, a previous student who graduated from a past class is going to come and talk to you about what to expect in this class, what helped him or her to be successful. Next week, we're going to have another student come in, and they're going to talk the same thing. It's really about preparing you for getting the most out of this class. In a few weeks, we're going to have past teachers come in and talk to you about JavaScript. That'll be related to the stuff we're starting to learn for the first time in the class, but they're going to explain to you how they use JavaScript in their job. As we get closer to the end of the curriculum, we'll start having people coming in that are experts in staffing, and they'll tell you how to prepare for job interviews, how to start your job search, how to polish up your resume. So these guest speakers are going to be very powerful and impactful for the entire 12 weeks that we're in this program. Okay, so that's tomorrow at 3:30. Your calendar invite, which was sent out, changes that. So you're still going to come to this same Google Hangout room, but that's tomorrow at 3:30. And then class with me resumes at 5. And then Friday is open office hours from 4 to 6. So if any of you would love to spend 30 minutes talking about anything, going over the stuff we learned this week, I know that we've gone over a lot. This is going to be a really powerful tool for you guys in coming weeks as we start really diving into software development for the first time. We start working on projects together. I'll be able to peer review your code and kind of act like if I was a senior engineer working at your company. Here's good practices, here's bad practices, here's something to think about for performance, really to sharpen you up. These office hours, like, I lead a team of engineers for the past 15 years, right? Like, this is really good on-the-job training, and you should treat it as such. Do not hesitate to schedule time. I believe you should all have a link, but I'll share it again tomorrow. I'll share it again right now, actually, to make sure that everybody, Calendly, to make sure that you guys are able to take advantage of that and schedule it. The only thing I would ask is that, I want to get out early on a Friday just as much as you guys do. I got, 20 animals to take care of. So, let me find this link. So the way if you guys have never used Calendly before, this is kind of the interface it gives you, and it gives you these time slots that are available on Friday. If they're all open, take the earliest one, and then if 4 o'clock is taken, take 4:30. If 4:30 is taken, take 5, just so we can all just be done at the end of the day. There's obviously more people in this class than there are slots, so if all these slots are taken and you still want to talk with me, we can either go earlier or later, and I'll just add more slots. But I wasn't sure how often this would get used, because this is the first cohort where we're doing this. So I will send everybody a link to this page.
Can you also make sure you add it into the class?
Yep, I will do exactly that. So here is the link. I'm going to put it in our CBC channel. I'm going to put it in the topic of CBC. Schedule. Office.
Can you pin the comment?
Yeah, I put it in the topic. So
No, can you pin it so it would stay up the top?
I don't know. Everyone can, right? You can add it to your saved items. I could pin it, but I'll pin it for now. But yeah, generally, if you want something pinned or saved, it's better for you to go in and click here and add it to your saved items. So now it's saved for me, as opposed to being saved for everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'll pin it for a little while for sure. I try to use pinned items as just things that really we care about at the moment, because these have a bad habit in Slack and in other chat systems of going stale, right? So, I could pin something like the cheat sheet in there today, and we'd forget that it's pinned, and then no one would never look at it again. I also put it in the title. So if you want to schedule time on Friday, please do so. It's encouraged. I would love to talk to you individually. I'd love to, if there's some part of this, if you took a C++ class in the middle of our class, I'd love to just spend time and we can just play with Markdown together. This is going to be really important next week when we start getting into HTML and CSS.
I was planning on hitting you up too. So
I'm here. I belong to y'all Monday through Friday. So I am your resource to make you the world's greatest software developers.
And then we can take over the world.
That is the goal always. Yeah, we always are trying to take over the world. So, yes, Andrew.
So I know we touched on branches briefly yesterday, and I know that you said mostly we'll view them in GitHub. Is there a way to view separate branches in Visual Studio Code?
Yes. So right here, down here in the bottom left, you see it says main. Mm-hmm. I can click on this and check out a different branch if I have other branches. I can create a new branch from here. I can create a new branch from a different place. Like some of this stuff is kind of like hardcore level stuff, but all the basics, create a new branch. If I wanted to make one now, let's check this in first. Let's not get our work lost. And let's say updated. And then push. So if I type in a new branch name up here and I say about me, right? Because your homework tomorrow is going to be you're going to do exactly what we did today with a README file, but you're going to go and create a README file that is separate from README called about me, and in that we're asking you to write about yourself, kind of like what Gregory had already started doing. Write a little bit about your hobbies, what you hope to be, what kind of software developer you want to be. Just be a little bit expressive, but we would really want to reinforce, hey, it doesn't have to be a README file. READMEs are something magic that GitHub displays. But you can have 10, 15 README Markdown files in your repositories. All right, so we made a new branch. Now we know that we're in About Me. And if I click it, I can see my 3 things. Also, if I come to my terminal, I can do, if I type ls, you'll see that this changes from main to about me because that's the branch I'm in, and I can also type get branch and see which one I'm in. Can we do anything else from here? I can go straight to another branch. So that's doing the checkout, right? Check out, check in, and if we let's make a file in about me, right? So cool secret file .md, right? So this is a secret. We're going to add it. So we're going to click the button, the plus, added secret file. We click check to commit. We push. It's going to say the branch about me has no upstream branch. Would you like to create it? So that's saying GitHub doesn't know this branch exists yet. And that's fine. This is a brand new branch we just created. So when we click OK, it's going to create it in GitHub now. And we'll show that next. But the cool thing is, just like we were kind of playing around yesterday when we were going back and forth between branches, right? This cool secret file exists here. If I check out, git checkout main, cool secret file immediately changes over here and disappears. Right? ls. The same thing would happen if we went in here and checked out about me. Comes back. Disappears. Right? All the same behaviors we learned yesterday, briefly, we learned today as well. And the same thing holds true in GitHub. Right? So if I go back to GitHub, where's my GitHub at? All right. Scroll up. I click on the little cat symbol to take me back to my page. I go to week 1. Now you see it says there's 2 branches. And it says about me had 1 recent push. So we were talking yesterday about pull requests and what that does. That the pull request, if you got, who remembers what pull requests are for?
Isn't a pull request to like take the information from GitHub back to the Visual Studio?
No, that's close. And it's kind of a tricky question because we are doing get pull to bring stuff down to us, right? So when we're in Visual Studio or when we get Bash, if I do get pull here, that's the thing. But a pull request is saying, I am sending you a request to do a pull, right? So when we do a pull request here, it's saying, I have this branch about me, and I want you to put it into main, right? It doesn't make as much sense in the context of I'm my only developer and I'm working by myself, but in the context of you're a developer on a team, you're going to do this all the time. You're going to work on a feature and you're going to say, this is ready to go. This is ready to be moved in. And so when we do a pull request, we're saying, check out our code, review it, make sure it's ready, and then merge it into main, right? So we have this secret file in here. Before we do the pull request though, let's take a look at branches. We can see these are the branches that exist that GitHub knows about. Let me make this a little bit bigger, right? So we have main, and we have about me, which we just added because we said okay when it popped up in Visual Studio. If I click about me, you can see that one has cool secret file. We can go back to branches here, or we can select from this drop down, right? The branch thing is a real quick selector here as well. And then we can see there's no cool secret file here, okay? But we know about me had a recent push, so let's do a pull request. This is a good thing to go over because we just did it yesterday. We talked yesterday about like if you're working on a team, you might select some reviewers. You might assign someone to be responsible for the pull request. If you have any labels or if it's a part of a larger project, you might select that here. But the easiest thing to do, usually, I mean, this is Markdown as well. So all the stuff we were doing before in Markdown, you can put in here. So you can do things like review steps, right? And we learned today that we can put in checkboxes or like a to-do list that says like, verify the secret file exists, right? And then make sure the secret file is cool. And then we can even put in an image. We can be like, this is what it looks like. And then this is a really cool thing. You were talking earlier about how do we get images into things. With this specific editor in GitHub, they spent a lot of time with some crazy JavaScript so that we can drag and drop things into this editor. So let me show you that. Let's go to our CBC, which is here. User is me. CBC 12. Week 1 homework. So we're going to just take this unicorn picture that we put in yesterday we were playing around with. You guys remember that? I'm going to drag this into here. You can see that what it's doing is it's the same syntax we learned earlier, the exclamation point, the box. It puts the file name unicorn1, and then it automatically, behind the scenes, through some crazy programming magic, uploaded that image and inserted the URL to where that image is stored. So when I create this pull request now, it gives us all the things that we were talking about before, but these checkboxes are interactive, so that's pretty cool. It also included our image, but in the context of the pull request itself, what our next steps would normally be, if I'm a developer that's reviewing this, I'm going to go check out what has changed, and we see, hey, this is just a brand new file. The file exists, okay? And then I'm going to go back over here, and then I'm going to say merge. So this is doing the merge step that we learned yesterday, where we're doing, that was us saying get merge about me. Right? So us doing this is exactly what is happening behind the scenes when you click this button online. Okay, so it says pull request successfully merged and closed. Now we can choose, do we want to delete this branch or are we going to keep working on it? Sometimes you delete, sometimes that's a feature you're going to continue working on, but we're going to delete this one. And then back over here, I can either do it here and do a git pull, which will update main and bring in secret file, or I can do it in Visual Studio. And I can come in here and say, and click on this thing and say pull. This might also do it as well. I don't know what this does. Refresh. Yeah. I'm going to do pull right here. And so now, even though we're in main, we now have cool secret file.markdown. You guys got it? Awesome. All right. To recap, tomorrow at 3:30, you will join this Google Hangout. We're going to have a guest speaker. Sarah will probably kick things off. I don't know if I'll be able to attend every guest speaker. I'm going to try to go up tomorrow. I don't have any meetings in the late afternoon, but if I'm not there at 3:30, someone should be here to let you guys into the room. Ask questions to your speakers. Ask them about how they like their job, especially the ones that are coming tomorrow. They were like either last year or earlier this year. They've been in this position. They've gone through the same course as you guys, and then they turned around and got a job. And ask them about like what was your first. What are some things that you had to learn on the job that you did not learn in this class? Because then we can teach it in the class, and then easy peasy. You guys are better prepared than them. So that's tomorrow at 3:30. Your homework for tomorrow is going to be creating another Markdown file that is about yourself. And then tomorrow for class, we're going to start introducing HTML. We're going to be doing HTML and CSS for like the next week and a half. So this will be a much more in-depth, longer process learning our first kind of like real language. Anybody have anything else? Nope. All right. Well, it is 8:40. I'm going to stick around here for a little bit. If anybody's has some questions or wants to chat, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, get a good night's sleep, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night, Andrew. Bye, Leah. Bye, Estrella.